Hey everybody, so today we're going to be learning from Chapter 2, Lesson 5, comparing and ordering fractions, decimals, and percents. First, we're going to start learning how to compare and order fractions, and then later on, probably for homework, you're going to do Part 2 of the lesson, which will be decimals and percents. So, getting started, first, when we're comparing and ordering, a lot of times we're using inequality signs. So hopefully this is something familiar to you, but just for a brief review, we're going to write down what the inequalities look like and how to use them. Inequality signs. We're going to read these from left to right. Okay, that's going to be important for how you understand whether something is larger or smaller. Then we also need to, something that helps you remember which of the inequality signs is larger or smaller is, if you think about an alligator, okay, an alligator wants to eat the bigger number. So, and I'll draw this so you'll kind of understand a little better what I'm talking about. So the alligator eats the bigger number. Example, okay, 1 is less than 3. So again, I read this from left to right. 1 is less than 3, and I'm going to draw some teeth in my alligator. So this is an alligator, okay, and it wants to eat the bigger number. That's one way to remember it. All right, so now that we kind of have the basis for inequality signs, let's do a couple of examples. So here's one inequality sign, and here's how we would use it. 3 is less than 5. That's how you would read it. 3 is less than 5. Okay? All right, and then for the next inequality sign, it's just the opposite of this one. It looks like this, and this is how we're going to use it. So if we add the number 4 here, 4 is greater than 1, for example. And that's how you would say it. 4 is greater than 1. Highlight this real quick. So the way that your inequality sign points is very important. All right, now let's start comparing and ordering fractions. So we are going to compare 5/8 and 7/12. Okay, so to compare 5/8 and 7/12, we're going to have to use a common denominator. So you might remember us using common denominators early on in the year to try to do this already. So 5/8 and 7/12, I'm going to rewrite it over here. 5/8, 7/12, and I'm just going to skip count by 8 and by 12 to see if they have a common multiple, something that I could use as a common denominator. And I'm going to write up here, use common denominator. That's our strategy. Okay, so I'm counting by eighths, 8, 16, 24, 32. And I'm counting by 12, 12, 24, 36. Okay, already I noticed that they both have something in common. They have the number 24 in common. So I am going to use 24 as their denominator. Okay, so they both have 24 in their denominator. I'm kind of setting up an equal ratio. Okay, so we did this in rates and ratios chapter. Now I got to figure out how do I get from 8 to 24. If I count on my hands, I can skip count 8, 16, 24, so 3 times 3. I'm going to do the same to the top, times 3. 5 times 3 is 15. Now I'm going to do the same over here. Counting with my hands, 12, 24, so 2 times. I'm going to do the same to the top. 7 times 2 is 14. Okay, so now I have the same denominator. I have common denominator, so now I can really compare them. I can see which one is greater and which one is smaller. Okay, so I notice 15 over 24 and 14 over 24. Well, 15 is greater than 14. So I'm going to use this inequality sign, because this tells me that 15 is greater, and if you think of the alligator wants to eat the bigger number. So 15 24ths is greater than 14 24ths. Okay, now we're going to learn how to order from least to greatest. Okay, so let's say we wanted to order the numbers 4/5, 1/2, 9/10, and 3/4. Again, what we have to do is use a common denominator. So I'm going to set up all my numbers here. 4/5, 1/2, 9/10, and 3/4. Okay, so I need to skip count by all these numbers and find out if they have a common multiple. So 5, 10, 15, 20, okay, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 10, 20, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. So I notice they all have 20 in common. So I'm going to use 20 as a common denominator. Okay, now I got to figure out how I go from this number to this number, okay, and do the same for each. 5 times 4 is 20. Do the same to the top. 2 times 10 is 20. Same to the top. 10 times 2 is 20. 9 times 2 is 18. And last one, 4 times 5 is 20. Do the same to the top. Okay? So now, I have 16 20ths, 10 20ths, 18 20ths, and 15 20ths. So I'm going to be looking at all of these numbers that I just made into equivalent fractions, okay, for their original fraction. I'm going to use these to help me compare and order them. But when I rewrite this from least to greatest, I'm going to use their original fraction form. So, let's see, let's look for the smallest fraction. So it looks like the smallest fraction is 10 20ths. Okay, 10 is less than all these other numbers. So I'm going to write half first. So half goes first. Remember, we're writing this from least to greatest. Then I'm going to look for the next smallest fraction. Okay, I have 16, 18, and 15. 15 is smaller than 18 and 16. Okay, 15/20s. So I'm going to write 3/4 next. Okay, now the next one is going to be 16 because 18 is larger than 16. So 16/20ths, so that means 4/5 should go next. And last one is 18/20ths, 9/10ths. Okay, so I used the common denominator to help me compare all these fractions, but then once I needed to order them, I'm using the original fraction. Okay, we'll do part 2 tomorrow.